Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of my music and conversation show. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Michael Lington, and I have been doing these conversation shows, music and conversation shows, for a while now because in March, my album Alone Together, the duets, came out, and I started it as I was speaking to all of my duet partners on these albums. Well, we've done a lot of shows, and of course, there's only 10 songs on the new album, so we we were done with that. But I decided to continue with artists that I've been friends with, I've collaborated with, and so continue the conversation because it has been so much fun to get to know about their backgrounds and things we never get to know. And talk about when we're at live shows and we see each other. Today, it is a gentleman that I do have also have known for a very long time, an amazing saxophonist and songwriter, artist. So let's just bring him on. Here he is, Mr. Steve Cole. Hey, Steve.
Hey, what's up, Mike?
How you doing, buddy?
Good, I'm doing well. I love that intro song. What's that called?
Oh, it's called, well, what do you think it's called?
Alone Together?
No, it's called Woo! It is a tune. It's a very funny tune because I wrote that with my pal Ray Parker Jr. Mm-hmm. And we were writing music for an album, and he said, I got an idea. He came over to my house in a convertible Porsche with a guitar sticking out of the passenger seat. No case, no nothing. He says,
"Oh
okay.
no,
yeah, oh yeah." And he had driven from Woodland Hills, was just like an hour away. So,
oh, that's hilarious.
Anyway, we ended up writing this song, and it became a part of my Second Nature album or Silverline. I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
But Steve, thank you so much for hanging out with me today here. Where are you at in the world?
In the world, I am in Minneapolis.
Okay.
I'm in the Minneapolis part of the world.
And how is it there?
It's hot, man.
Oh, good. Okay.
It's really hot. We're in the 90s this week, but it's sunny and beautiful and just a little steamy.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about Steve Cole. How did it all begin? Again, what we talked about,
Well, when two people love each other very much.
Well, we could maybe skip that part and go a little bit further. But where did it all start for you, man? I don't think it started in Minneapolis.
No, it started in Chicago. It all started in Chicago, and it all started with my dad, who's a saxophone player as well. Okay. And he got me hooked onto the family business. And I was a slow learner. I was like a really slow learner. I was not super into it when I first started taking lessons. When you pick an instrument in elementary school if you're in that kind of vibe. And I got kind of frustrated because in band you have to play parts that aren't always the melody.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a drag for me. So I would just play the melody all the time, and then I'd get yelled at, and then I finally got kicked out of band. But yeah, I mean, that might, and I got really serious about it, kind of early in high school, That's when it clicked for me, and I found a great teacher, and he really inspired me to really do the real deal. So yeah.
In your home, was your parents, were they sort of musically inclined? Were they also musicians, or were they just lover of music?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. My dad was a professional musician.
Okay.
And he'd been doing that since he was a kid in high school. And then he had a band that would go out and he would play more like events and stuff. He didn't really do clubs. Well, he did clubs early on in his career, but Mm-hmm. Later on, he was doing more events and stuff like that. And my mom is a wonderful vocalist,
okay.
Classically trained, and sang in a lot of choirs and musicals and stuff like that. So yeah, music was around a lot at home when I was growing up, definitely.
Well, I mean, your dad's instrument was what did he play?
He was a saxophone player.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
tenor player.
well, it kind of leads me into the next question. Why the saxophone? Why not the clarinet or the flute or, I don't know, the violin, the drums? I mean,
I
you tell
know.
me. Was
It's a
it
good
because of your dad?
question. I started playing clarinet, and I don't know why that is. Like my dad thought, maybe it was because it was lighter,
Yeah.
and he didn't want me to have to lug a tenor saxophone to school in the winter. But
Yeah.
I didn't love clarinet, and not because I don't love the clarinet. I didn't connect with it
Yeah.
at the time, and then I started like listening to Benny Goodman and Buddy DeFranco and
Yeah.
Pete Fountain, and then later
Right.
Eddie Daniels, and I'm like, oh
Sure.
my God, I missed out a lot in the clarinet world. But
Well, it's very interesting. See, this is one of the things I love about. We've never talked about this, and
Yeah.
my first instrument was clarinet as well, and I had the exact same feelings. I mean, at first you just kind of play it because that was what was, okay, I'll pick up the clarinet and go into band, but
Yeah.
I didn't connect with it either. And then I started hearing people like Eddie Daniels going, let him play the clarinet. Let me,
Yeah.
let me, And that's the same thing I feel about flute. It's like, I hear Nelson Rangel or, I mean,
Yep.
there's unbelievably flute players, Najee, and I was like, let them play the flute. Yeah, there's, So, but okay. So was it the tenor sax or alto or how what did it start for you?
Well, I really fell in love with the tenor saxophone because my dad had this beautiful Selmer balanced action tenor that he bought in a pawn shop. And it's a really funny story. It's kind of a tragic but funny story. He had two gigs, one in the afternoon, one in the evening, and he stopped to get a bite to eat. And he had a station wagon at the time. This is like in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
And he had his horns in the back. He put a blanket over him. Someone broke into his car and stole his saxophone in between gigs.
Oh, wow.
So he ran into a pawn shop a couple of blocks away and bought this horn for $50, and it didn't play. He had to make some pads out of like wine cork.
Oh, wow.
And make it work with some rubber bands just to get through the gig. But it turns out it's a beautiful, amazing, Selmer saxophone. And I would just open the case and look at it. I just thought it was the most beautiful thing I ever saw. Yeah. But I didn't play tenor first. I played alto first.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you go through stages where you're like, okay, I'm all about the alto, and then it's like, no, now I'm all about the tenor. I cannot be bothered with it. I've gone back and forth a little bit. What about you?
I started with alto because I was studying classical music primarily.
Oh.
And most of the I don't know if you ever done any classical saxophone stuff,
Well,
any of that repertoire.
Well, I have actually. Well, I have to say this. My teacher always told me. He said, if you want to be a musician out of work, pick a classical saxophone because there's not that many gigs, or unless you want to be a part of even in orchestras. There's not. It's mostly clarinet or French. Not French horn, but what is it? The oboe and the bassoon and all. But as far as saxophone, there's not much saxophone. And by the way, there's not much classical music written for the saxophone as a solo instrument either. So
right, because it came along so late. It wasn't around in the 1600s.
Right. But I will say this, though, going back to the clarinet really quickly. In my opinion, one of the most beautiful classical pieces ever written was the Clarinet Concerto by Mozart, and I did play that, and that was the one thing where I go, that I connect with. It's such a beautiful piece of music.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's funny. We had an album, an actual vinyl of a music -1 of the Mozart Clarinet Concerto.
Oh, okay.
And I would try to play along with it. And I would get through the first, I don't know, page without crashing and burning. But you couldn't stop it. It was just spinning. It's not like it was in Pro Tools where you can like, I think I'll just slow it down.
Yeah.
But I was a classical guy, and so I was super into the alto. But to your point, quickly kind of moved into jazz, R&B, soul music, gospel music, blues, because I did want to work.
Right.
But it was great doing that. You know.
Right. So there you are. I'm assuming you're a teenager at this point, and you play the sax and stuff. So where did the Steve Cole we know, where did that sort of start coming from? That must have been a break, or you start doing some gigs and then there was kind of a break and one thing after the other type of thing?
Yeah, it's funny because that's a really good question. I have no idea. I don't even know who the hell you're talking about. No, but
Oh, you do.
but you know what? I think what started to happen was when I was in college, I started playing, events and stuff, and ended up playing a lot of pop music.
Yeah.
And then a lot of really cool, ballads had saxophone solos, and I would play them at these parties, weddings, whatever. I was doing a lot of that kind of, we call them jobbing dates. You guys call them casuals, I guess.
That's right. Yeah. That's it.
But it was just like kind of, I really dug that. I really dug playing, like the pop and soul and R&B, and like,
right.
I started to really connect with that music. And then I started to really kind of, feel that,
Yeah.
and the saxophone started to become more of a voice to me.
Right. But was there a break? Was there a tour that you got offered, or was there a person that you met, or an artist that you met, or that was sort of like, okay, I mean, I have one for me. I came over, did the same thing. I'll give you an example. I came over here, did the same thing you did, casuals, corporate events, bar mitzvahs, I mean, you name it, right?
Yeah,
Christmas parties, whatever. And which was, by the way, I actually enjoyed doing them because I came over here and I realized that I basically didn't know enough, and on those gigs you have to know a lot of tunes, a lot of classic from the Great American Songbook, but also you have to know how to improvise, you have to remember melodies, and sometimes they'll change the key, so you really have to be good to do these things. And I talk about burning and crash. I would not, I'd heard, I know Misty and I know All of Me, but whatever, like I knew like like 5 songs or something like that I was like, yeah, I know that, right? But I said, well, you're going to need more than, so before I got hired for the first show, it's like, you're going to need more than that. No problem. I had photocopied a real book. There were individual sheets that I brought.
Wow.
and I showed up in the gig, and of course they're calling a tune I never heard of. And like, hold on a second.
Let me flip through all these.
Yeah. Pages flying all over the place. And I was so embarrassed about it.
No, I could totally see it.
And I was like, yeah, I could play the saxophone, but I didn't know what I needed to. But anyway, so the guy that hired me says, you need to check this. You need to figure this out, because this is not going to work for you. I mean, you need to. And so I started doing that, and I practiced all these tunes in different keys, and I really spent 2 years, learning like 2 songs a day. And memorizing and know how to improvise that. But the point was that after a year or two of doing that, I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I have to go through a kitchen to play at a wedding.
My God,
it was like, I don't know. I feel like that's not why I moved from Denmark. So the point I wanted to get to is my big break was when I got offered the tour with Bobby Caldwell. Also, that opened a whole nother. I was a part of the jazz scene. I didn't know Bobby. I didn't know who any of Boney James or Dave Koz were. I mean, they offered me the tour, and all of a sudden I'm now submerged into this sort of contemporary jazz world. But what about you? Was there a person you met that sort of removed you from doing jobs in Chicago?
Yeah, definitely. And I have there's kind of two stories that are relevant to that. And one, is kind of interesting, and it's and I tell it a lot because I want young musicians to hear this story. So I always heard when I was a young musician that you don't say no to a gig. You take the gig because you got to learn. And I remember it was many years ago. I was living in Chicago. I was living in a high rise. It was a really, really awful like November day. It was raining and cold, and it was a Sunday.
Right.
And I was really content to be in my apartment with a movie and a pizza. That's all I wanted to do.
Right.
And I got this call from this person I'd never heard of before, and she had a gig, and it was like an hour's drive away.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also really late. It started at like 9, and then it went until like 1 a.m. or something like that. It was a club, and it was a club that was attached to a Ramada Inn. Okay, so just painting the picture here.
Yeah.
And it was, and the money was terrible.
Right.
And I was about to say no, and then that little thing went off in my brain. Fast forward to the gig. I'm looking at the bass player, and I'm like, I know this guy.
Yeah.
Why do I know this guy? It turns out that the singer was a dear friend of the bass player, and whenever he was in town, he would play her gig because they were just really dear friends.
Right.
And he was in town because his regular gig was playing with Miles Davis, and his name was Richard Patterson.
Oh.
And so
well, you tell me who Richard is.
So Richard Patterson's a bass player. He was the bass player in Miles Davis's last band before Miles passed away.
Right.
And he's also played with David Sanborn for many, many years. Sure. Boz Scaggs, not Gladys Knight. Maybe it was
just
Gladys
a very,
Knight.
very
yeah, I mean,
really
really
well respected and amazing.
And he was
artist,
touring with Miles Davis, and he heard me and liked how I played,
right?
And that really kind of raised my stock in the city. Right. And then the opportunity I got where I was able to really kind of start thinking about a career, as a touring artist, was a guy named Bob Mamet.
I remember Bob, keyboard player. Yeah, of course.
And so he was signed to Atlantic, and I was introduced to him through some mutual friends. Started touring with him in support of his second album. Mm-hmm. And then we started writing some music together, and I got to know some of the folks at Atlantic, and that led to me meeting Brian Culbertson when he had just kind of finished his second album, and I played on his second album. So that's interesting.
So you and Brian didn't kind of know each other from the whole Chicago thing?
We did. Brian was a few years younger than me. Yeah. So I didn't know of him until his first record came out.
Okay.
And he didn't really know of me because, I was in a different scene. He was just starting out and just starting to understand who the different players were. I think he was playing mostly with his buddies from college.
Right.
I think his first band were like a bunch of people he went to college with.
Right. Well, can I just pause you there for a quick second? Do you have a seatbelt on the chair that you're sitting on?
No, why?
Okay.
Ah! See, now that is later. So that's Harry Mira on guitar. Mike Manson is playing bass. In the back there is probably I think it might be Tommy Hipskin, but I can't see him, so I can't tell. And then that young man.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah. One Steve Cole. Early young Steve Cole. But
that is very funny.
But did you end up then getting a record deal from your relationship with Atlantic? Did you end up was your first album on Atlantic?
My first album was on Atlantic, but it was really more based on the work that Brian and I had done together. Right. So I was familiar with folks at Atlantic from working with Bob, and then I wrote a couple of songs with him and co-produced a few tracks with him. And then through working with Brian and then starting to write some music with Brian, and Brian supporting a demo for me back when demos were a thing.
Yeah.
But it took a long time. It wasn't just like, here's a demo that Brian and I worked on together, so sign Steve. It was like,
Yeah.
And then it was years later that finally,
So
how
did you get the contract then? Was it just keep on nurturing those relationships, and eventually the music kind of connected with the people at the label?
Yeah, I think so. It was interesting because the first demos were not received. I mean, I think they were well received, but it wasn't like, oh man, let's go.
We got to do that. Yeah.
Let's sign the papers and back up
Right.
It was years later. I kept, Brian, I think, was really close with a guy named George Knopfel, who was originally a founder of Mesa Blue Moon.
Yeah.
And then moved over to Atlantic when that label was acquired by them. and he's marvelous.
Right.
And he was really supportive of Brian, and he and I got to know each other just because I was touring with Brian for many years,
Right.
and then writing music with him. And
Sure.
Brian was very supportive of trying to help me get a deal.
Right.
And it was funny because there was a song that we wrote as kind of another demo, and we played it for George, and I think that's the song it turned out to be Where the Night Begins from my Stay a While album. But I think that's the song that kind of turned his head and said, you know what, I think this guy might be ready to do his own thing.
Yeah, and this is of course the album we're talking about, right? That's the debut.
Yeah.
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 Very, very cool. Well, Steve, so I want to talk a little bit about our collaboration lately,
Yeah.
or the recent collaboration. And actually, I suppose that, I mean, we've probably done some jam stuff, or we've not really done any tours together. But we've seen each other so many times over the years. Just
we've
places.
probably done like the midnight jam thing and hung out and played over something together.
Yeah.
But we've never actually kind of engineered
Right.
something to do together. Yeah.
And I really have to tell you, I mean, I was blown away this past year and a half, how amazing our artist community has been, and we've sort of all helped each other out, because it was a tough year for us. It was a very difficult and a lot of uncertainty. But I want to thank you for being so kind and jumping at this without even thinking about it. I mean, you just said pretty much, let's do something, and we came up with a really cool thing, something that I really love a lot. And I have always, and you know this because I've told you that, but I've always appreciated you as a friend and a person, but your playing, your musicianship is just stellar. I mean, it's you got the tone, you got the vibe, you write great melodies. I mean, you're a fantastic saxophone player and a musician. So, but I feel that way about you anyway. So,
well, thank you, and likewise. I mean, that's so kind of you to say, man. I really appreciate it. Coming from you is, that means a lot, man. Because I'm a
I mean
fan,
that very much.
Love your music, and
Thank you.
Actually, I was distracted by your music. I didn't even want to talk about me today.
Well, so we did a duet together on my sort of almost weekly show on Stage It, which, by the way, has been such an amazing ride for me, and continuing because of not knowing what to do when this pandemic hit and we couldn't go tour. I had an artistic outlet to create these shows and also stay in touch with my fans and build this community. And it's been a beautiful community, and is still. And people are asking me to please don't stop doing these shows, because it sort of gives a different version of a show, right? So it's not a live show where you're in front of an audience. It's more like, hey, let's pull the curtain behind, and hey, pull up a chair, just hang out on the couch. Like almost like I walked into the living room and it's a little more sort of conversational. And they've been amazing to do. And one of my favorite things to do is to do these duet collaborations with people that they know and people they don't know, so I can introduce new artists as well.
Yeah.
So I want to play the video that you and I did. I forgot if it was it a Grover tribute show? I can't remember what
I think
the actual.
so. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you and I did an amazing version of one of my favorite Grover songs, and I want to play it for you guys right now. Check it out. there you have it. Steve Cole on the tenor sax, and
yeah, man, and Michael Lington on the alto sax, killing it,
man.
Killing it, man. Wait a minute. Alto saxophone for sale, cheap.
Yeah, well, I have not seen you hold an alto. I didn't even realize you had one.
I do. I have one of these things too. One of these. I don't know what you call this.
Something. Yeah, it's a metal clarinet. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, that's right.
Mine doesn't get much use either. But hey, Steve. So there's one thing I would love to know a little bit about is I've been the last couple of years. I created a tour called Sax to the Max with two fabulous saxophone players, Paul Taylor and Vincent Ngala. But years prior to that, you were a part of a tour called the Sax Pack. So how did that all come about? And that was a fun show. I mean, I'm obviously had something to do with the Rat Pack, I would think, but for sax players. But how did that all come about?
Oh man, I feel like we're the OGs of the saxophone package world. But so the story goes, right, as told by Jeff Kashua, he was hanging out with the Acoustic Alchemy guys and Miles Gilderdale. They were watching like a Rat Pack TV on a movie on TV, and apparently Miles said, "Oh, I know, the Sax Pack," as a joke, and Jeff took it seriously. and then how Jeff tells it. He says, I called Gerald Albright and Kirk Whalum, and they both turned me down, so I called you and Kim. And it was literally, I remember, I was driving home from somewhere, my phone rang. It was Jeff Kashua, who I didn't know very well at all. I mean, it was kind of like, we'd run into each other on the road, and big fan of his playing with solo stuff and with the Rippingtons. And he asked me if I would be interested in doing stuff, and I didn't even know Kim that well either.
Right.
But I was like, hell yeah, this sounds great. And we met. Yeah.
When did that all start? And when was the first year?
It has to be now. Maybe, was it 12 or 13 years ago? Or maybe it's even more than that. It might be more than that, man. Wow. Yeah. And so we met at baggage claim at the Albuquerque airport, which was where our first gig was. And it was like we had been on tour for the last 10 years. The
chemistry
clicked.
was just kind of there.
Oh great. Man. Yeah.
That's great.
And it was great. And it was really, really fun. Continues to be. We do some shows together every once in a while when we can all kind of coordinate our schedules together. Yeah. But it continues to be just a blast.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a fun show to watch, and also all of you guys are fantastic players. It always makes it even better when there's so much artistry together. It's not just put together for a specific reason, or some agent said you guys should all do something together. But it's
when you choose each other, it's
really, really good. So. We don't have a whole lot of time, Steve, but I would love to know from you. So what have you been doing in the last year and a half during this crazy year we had the pandemic, and what is happening now since it's sort of start opening up a little bit, all of it?
Yeah. Well, funny you should ask. I made a record.
Oh.
Allow me while I shamelessly self-promote.
No. So. Actually, this is, that is perfect. That's what we want to hear about. I actually knew you made a record, and it just came out not too long ago, actually.
Yeah, it just came out in June, June 18th, and it's called Smoke and Mirrors. Hold on a minute. I got to get my camera to focus on it. There we go. Smoke and Mirrors. It doesn't come in this big thing. This is just kind of a fun thing that I created, but and I was really psyched to get the call from my record label very early into the kind of quarantine, and I thought that call was going to be all about like, hey, we don't know what's going on, and and they were like, no, they're like, hey, it's time to make some music, and I was really, really psyched about that because that gave me, an outlet and an artistic, kind of endeavor to really, dive into during that whole time. Right. So that's what I did. I made a whole record, and it was interesting, not doing it in person with people, but it also had some really cool, there were some cool things that happened, by virtue of the way we had to do it.
Yeah.
which was remotely. So that was great. And then, as the world starts opening up, I'm excited to, start getting back out there when it's, when it's safe to do so. And I can't wait to start playing some of this new music too.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you so much for dropping by today, taking the time. And
Oh,
it is
man.
always a pleasure talking to you. And it's definitely always a pleasure listening to you. So thank you so much. I wish you absolutely the best with the new album. Just tell us what's the best way to keep up with you and what you're up to and your tour schedule and all that stuff.
Yeah. So I have a website. It's www.stevecole.net. Don't forget it's net. SteveCole.com is a photographer who's kind enough to send me emails every once in a while when people get us confused. So it's SteveCole.net, and also Facebook, Instagram, Twitter,
Yeah.
Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere you could possibly imagine. I'm there.
Okay.
Not in a creepy way, but just in a
But
normal
there,
way.
yeah.
Yeah. And my new album, Smoke and Mirrors, is all over that. And yeah, it's been a blast, and thank you for having me, man. I've loved how you have, really taken to this format of engagement online, and how creative you are, and the collaborations that you do, and also how you you lift up other musicians and artists, so yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm a huge fan and very flattered to be invited.
Thank you for saying that, Steve, and that has been a really positive silver lining in all of this, that I've gotten a chance to get closer in this last year with most of my friends, artist friends, and just musicians in general than I have in the past 30 years because of this. So it's really been a wonderful sort of discovery for me to. I did this original, all of this, whatever it's this music and conversation show or my stages show. I did all of this to keep engaged, with my community, but also to wake up every day and feel I had something to do. And out of it came a new album, Alone Together, and being closer to my friends. So it's really been a blessing, and it's a blessing to have you on the program because I love what you do, and I so appreciate you, Steve. So thank you very much.
Thank you, man.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Steve Cole. And what a killer guy, sax player. Can't wait to see him again on the road. Maybe we can even do Wine Light again. But thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And again, the reason why this program is called Alone Together, Music and Conversations, because of my album, Alone Together, the Duets. If you haven't gotten it yet, it's available everywhere, including on my website, michaellington.com. You can get your signed copies. And also, a couple little things here before I go. I want to remind you that this Sunday, by the way, I should say this, on next week, I am getting married. So the reason I'm saying that is because, well, I'm very excited about it, but also I have another stage it shows a live stream this Sunday, and then I'll be taking a few weeks off. So I will tell you about that this Sunday. My live stream stage it show is funk. It is all funk music, and my special guest is none other than Brian Culbertson. So I hope you guys can tune in. It's very easy to tune in. You go to my website, michaellington.com, or my social media, and you'll see posts about it. You get yourself a ticket. It's pay what you can, as usual. But it's all taking place on stageit.com at 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And lastly, I want you to be a part of my community and get priority notifications. And the way to do that, if you look at your screen right now, take out your phone, and it's a very easy way to do it. Your phone, go to your text, and then send me a text. And the way you do that is where the number goes, you go 797979, and the text itself, just text ML Sax. Uppercase, lowercase, it doesn't matter. And you'll get a little message back, and now you are on the priority list, the VIP list, and you'll get the first news and shows and whatever else is going on. So I hope to see you there. But thank you so much for tuning in today, and I hope also I get a chance to see you this Sunday for funk. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a continued lovely Wednesday.